Everyone. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the opening ceremony of the 9th edition of FACAMP Model United Nations. I am Professor Patricia Rinaldi. I am Professor of International Relations at FACAMP, and I am one of the academic coordinators of FAMUN, together with Professors Patrícia Borelli, Roberta Machado, e Rúbia Marcuzzi. FAMUN is an academic project developed by FACAMP's Nucleus of Studies and Research in International Relations. FAMUN involves teaching, research, and outreach activities intending to offer practical education on international negotiations and decision-making. In this sense, we are proud to contribute to Brazilian society with innovative teaching, learning, and research practices. This is a special year for everybody here. This is a special year for FAMUN, because after 2 years of online conferences, this is the first time we are held in FAMUN here in person at FACAMP. And that was only due to vaccines and the safety of all. In this context, FAMUN 2022 invites young Brazilian students to think about our future based on the challenge of today. That's why our conference theme is We Are Here, the Future is Now, which aims to highlight the central role of youth activism in finding solutions to the climate and human crisis that threatens not only humanity, but all its species. In the following days, our 400 delegates will simulate 4 different UN entities. We will simulate the United Nations General Assembly Third Committee with the topic Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Children, Ending Statelessness. We will also simulate the United Nations Security Council with the topic Open Debate on COVID-19 Vaccines in Contexts Affected by Conflict. We will also simulate for the first time in FAMUN the futuristic United Nations Youth Council with the topic Youth and Climate Change. And finally, we will simulate the historical United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, the Rio 92, simulated for the first time ever at FAMUN and under the WAIMUN approach, with the topic Rio Declaration on Environment and Development. Talking about the WAIMUN approach, FAMUN is proud to be the first WAIMUN affiliate. This means that FAMUN is committed to the WAIMUN approach, which offers the most accurate simulation of the United Nations in terms of leadership structure, rules of procedure, and flow of debate. We would like to give our most sincere thanks to Wafuna and the WAIMUN team for trusting us for all these years to be a WAIMUN affiliate. Besides, FAMUN is proud to take part for the 3rd time in the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees Moon Refugee Challenge, which is a challenge to all delegates worldwide to debate the major issues related to refugee and forced displacement. FAMUN 22 General Assembly delegates will be committed to including in their resolutions measures to support and protect stateless persons, especially children. And we count on all delegates to win this challenge for the 3rd time in a row. Well, after all these introductions, now I have the honor to present the FAMUN 2022 Senior Secretariat so they can take their seats at the stage. I would like to welcome first Ms. Larissa Líria, FAMUN 2022 Secretary General. Ms. Líria, welcome. I also welcome Mr. Fernando Cavallari, Undersecretary General for General Assembly Affairs and Conference Management. I welcome Mr. Talisson Gomes, the President of the General Assembly. I welcome Ms. Bruna Zanin, Undersecretary General for Management. I welcome Mr. Giovanni Benages, Assistant Secretary General for Management. I welcome Ms. Bianca Porcari, Undersecretary General for Global Communications. And last but not least, I welcome Mr. Gabriel Demoner, Assistant Secretary General for Global Communications. These 7 incredible students are our senior secretariat. They've been working around a year to make this conference possible. So let's give them a new round of applause. Thank you. Now I would like to welcome online, directly from New York, our guest speaker, Mr. William Yorev, Wafuna Model UN Coordinator. Hi, Bill. Welcome to our conference today. Thank you for accepting our invitation. And we're very honored to have your presence here today. We hope to see you in person next year. So now, let's move on to the most important part of this opening ceremony. I have the honor of giving the floor to Ms. Larissa Liria. She is the Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ms. Liria is a third-year student of International Relations at FACAMP. She's been participating in Model United Nations since high school, and she's proud to say that she chose to study International Relations at FACAMP thanks to FAMUN. She participated in more than 10 Model United Nations in Brazil and around the world, holding different positions. And she intends to continue participating for many years to come in Model United Nations. So I give the floor to our Secretary General, Ms. Larissa Liria.
Thank you. Good morning to all participants of FAMUN 2022. Welcome to the opening ceremony of the 90th edition of FACAMP Model United Nations. It's an honor to have you all here participating in our conference. Thank you for coming. I also would like to take this opportunity to thank our distinguished guests, William Yotsev. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and for sharing your experience and knowledge. It's an honor to welcome you to FAMUN 2022. FAMUN is a unique environment for young people from Brazil and abroad to discuss relevant topics on an international agenda. In this way, participants not only can learn about the United Nations organs, but also share knowledge, experience, and live lessons. Together, we engage in negotiations and debates, seeking solutions to real issues and giving visibility to topics that are not properly discussed, but affected thousands of lives every day. In 2022, FAMUN joined the call of youth, demanding that decision makers recognize the role of youth in combating global problems. We, young people from all over the world, have always been key actors in promoting peace, but our efforts are often invisible. It's time for us to join forces and share answers and solutions to global problems. Our actions and our voice have power. However, we will only be heard if we are together around a common goal, to act now. For me, FAMUN means stepping out of your comfort zone. FAMUN is a place of growth and transformation. I have been participating in this project since 2020, and I can't put into words how much I developed it. Growing up is not easy and often painful because it forces us to come out of the passive position. But I can assure you, it's rewarding. Participating in a conference like FAMUN, you develop as a person and a professional. in which we will develop the necessary skills to take youth agendas to the centers of decision making. Furthermore, I could not fail to highlight the most important value of this conference, consensus. FAMUN is affiliated with WAIMUN, the International Model United Nations of the World Federations of United Nations Associations, based on WAIMUN approach, which always values consensus. Consensus is not easy to achieve, as it takes time, effort, and determination to find a common ground. Even so, consensus is essential to the solutions of global problems, and it consolidates collective and long-term commitments and giving credibility to decisions. Finally, it's an honor to enunciate we are participating for the third consecutive year in the Moon Refugee Challenge, proposed by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Model United Nations from all over the world will discuss the main issues related to the protection of refugees, and the best resolutions will be recognized by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. I am sure that FAMUN 2022 will be a success, and that everyone will make the most of this sensational experience. I'm certain that the negotiations will be high level and very productive. And remember, now it's our turn. We have a responsibility to fight not only for our future, but for our present. Each of us have power to help limit global warming and take care of our planet. Come and be part of this purpose. We, the young people of Earth, are determined to save the present and the future by being the leaders of now. Thank you.
I thank our Secretary General for this inspiring speech. And talking about the role of youth in the United Nations, I now have the honor to give the floor to our special guest, Mr. William Yodev, Model UN Coordinator for Wafuna. Before working at Wafuna, Mr. Yodev was Project Manager of the United Nations Global Teaching and Learning Project within the Outreach Division of the UN Department of Public Information for more than 14 years. Mr. Yodev is better known by the FAMUN team as our dear friend Bill, because he is the great mind behind the WAIMUN approach. So Bill, thank you once again for your presence in our opening ceremony, and also thank you for all your support throughout this journey of making FAMUN 2022 possible. So now I give the floor to Bill so he can make his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Rinaldi, for that kind introduction. Hola to everyone. It is my great pleasure to send greetings from Wafuna, the World Federation of United Nations Associations, to FAMUN 2022. Correct me if I'm wrong, Professor Rinaldi, but I believe this is the 6th year that Wafuna International Model UN has been working with FAMUN, which, as I am very proud to say, is now a WAIMUN affiliate, to organize an authentic simulation of UN meetings based upon the consensus approach. Today, I wish to turn my attention to youth initiatives at the UN and opportunities to participate in activities at the UN. It is really an exciting time. So much is happening as new opportunities for youth to participate in the decision-making process at the UN are increasing. When I was working at the United Nations, I was the focal point for youth for my department, which used to be called the Department of Public Information and is now called the Department of Global Communications. And there was quite a lot going on during that time, but now there is even more. Youth initiatives that we are seeing today are the result of a long history of efforts to recognize the energy of young people, that they are vital for the continuing development of the societies in which we live. Now, I just want to give some highlights. I'm not going to go through every single milestone, but I want to give some highlights to show you how important youth have been and how they have been recognized throughout the UN history. One of the earliest examples I could find is in 1965, when member states endorsed what was called the Declaration on the Promotion among Youth of the Ideals of Peace, Mutual Respect, and Understanding between Peoples. In 1985, we had the UN General Assembly observe the International Youth Year. In 1995, member states adopted what is now called the World Program of Action for Youth. In 2009, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution 64/134 that proclaimed the year commencing on 12 August 2010 as the International Year of Youth. And now every year we celebrate the International Year of Youth on that date. So it was not that long ago that we had our celebrations in 2022. In 2010, the UN created what is still called the UN Interagency on Youth Development, that became the principal body within the UN system for fostering collaboration and coordination on youth issues. That is the interagency group that I was a part of and represented my department along with many other parts of the UN system and NGOs working on youth issues. Now, a key moment occurred in 2014 when the then Secretary General Ban Ki-moon appointed the first envoy on youth. And that envoy has made and still is making quite a significant impact in making sure that the voices of youth are heard within the UN system. 2015, the Security Council adopts Resolution 2250. And in 2018, the Security Council reaffirmed the need to fully implement this resolution and called on all relevant actors to consider ways to increase the representation of young people when negotiating and implementing peace agreements. 2018, we have the creation of Youth 2030, which is the United Nations system-wide youth strategy, and is now the umbrella framework that guides UN efforts in strengthening its work with and for young people. In 2020, member states adopted the UN 75 Declaration that reaffirmed UN principles and offered a positive vision for the future of the planet, which included a commitment to listen and work with youth. I will spend some time today talking about what initiatives are now being promoted by the United Nations since 2020. As you can see from these examples, the UN has considered youth to be a critical audience and partner in helping the UN achieve its goals. It also shows that the UN measures its success in part by how well it meets the needs of youth around the globe. Now, the focus on youth issues is still alive today. One only has to look at the recent report by the Secretary General called Our Common Agenda, which includes recommendations for increasing youth engagement both within and outside the United Nations. To underscore the importance of including youth in a meaningful way, Proposal 11 from the Declaration on the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the United Nations calls for a commitment, as I mentioned before, to listen to and work with youth. And the needs and obstacles to reach their full potential are underscored by statistics found in our common agenda, such as the following. Some 267 million young people, which is defined by young people between the ages of 15 and 24, are not in education. They are not have any employment or training, and 2/3 are young women. This statistic calls attention to two of the three priorities identified in consultation with youth around the world, which are the following. Young people around the world have identified these three priorities: having a voice, which Larissa mentioned in her comments, learning, and prospering. Let's take a look at each of these priorities. To listen to and work with youth, governments are urged to promote political participation for youth, with a particular emphasis on young women and girls. The SG is exploring establishing a Youth in Politics Index to track the participation of youth in countries and around the world. He is also proposing the establishment of a United Nations Youth Office in the Secretariat. And the Envoy on Youth will be preparing recommendations with input from young people around the world, which, if you would like to be a part of that, you can have your voice heard for more meaningful, diverse, and effective youth engagement in the United Nations decision-making process within the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, and their respective subsidiary bodies. That will be something that will be getting underway relatively soon. And the Envoy on Youth will be consulting with youth around the world for their recommendations. Let's look at learning. We know that quality education is a prerequisite for young people to be equipped to exercise their voice. Students in developing and developed countries say that they leave the education system without the tools that they need to adapt and thrive in a rapidly changing world. In response to this priority, the Secretary General will be convening a summit on transforming education in 2022 to accelerate progress towards the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal number 4. Let's look at prospering. Prospering focuses on the availability and sustainability of decent jobs and economic opportunities. And when we talk about decent jobs, this has been defined by the International Labor Organization as jobs that will allow young people around the world to live above the poverty line. Decent jobs are jobs that are safe, where you do not have to worry about getting injured. Decent jobs are jobs that have a social safety net and social protection, so that if you lose your job, there will be something there to help you get through the hard times. If you are a woman and you get pregnant and you have to take time off, that you will not necessarily lose your income during that time. And there's a focus on reskilling and upskilling youth. Now, these are two different kinds of things. Reskilling involves giving young people a new set of skills that they may need in order to join the labor market that would not be accessible to them without particular skills. Upskilling involves taking the skills that you have and expanding them and building upon them. Both of these are needed. So, in support of the global initiative on decent jobs for youth, the United Nations will launch a recovery barometer that will track career paths in the labor market for youth between now and 2025 as a part of the decade to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals. They will also be forming a high ambition coalition that will focus on the creation of jobs in the green and digital economy, which will be very important for the future, particularly with addressing climate change. Now, I want to focus on some of the resources that you have available to you. I did give something to Professor Rinaldi that hopefully you have each received a copy of. So many of these that I'll be going over, you should already have a copy of them so that you'll be able to go and look through some of these resources at some point in the near future. Now, one of the first questions you have to ask yourself is, how can you keep up to date on what is going on? what youth initiatives are being promoted at the United Nations. So one of the things that you need to know is what are some of the important reports that have come out where this information can be found. One that I have mentioned already is the report of the Secretary General called Our Common Agenda, which just came out last year. Then you must be familiar with the UN Youth Strategy, which is the overall framework that I had mentioned. And now there will be every year a progress report on tracking how well UN country teams and member states, what progress they're making on achieving the goals that have been set out in the UN Youth Strategy. There is also something now called the Youth 2020 UNCT Scorecard. UNCT stands for UN Country Team. And there is a scorecard, so UN country teams now know that they're going to be tracked on how well they are meeting and delivering on the UN Youth Strategy, which has been developed. Now, this also, you can also find, for instance, on a countrywide basis, so you could look up how is Brazil doing, so that you can, if you want to become more involved in how well Brazil is delivering on achieving the UN Youth Strategy, you can do that. And there is a list of multi-stakeholder initiatives on youth. So not only the UN has established guidelines and guideposts and goals, the UN is also tracking other stakeholders, could be NGOs, and what their initiatives are on youth. And you could find all of that in this resource that I have given you. Now, the other thing which you'll want to keep track of is what opportunities and events are being sponsored for youth. And one of the best ways to do that is through this new newsletter that the Envoy on Youth Office has put out called Youth 2030 Pulse. Now, on the information that I gave you to hand out, this link will allow you to sign up for that newsletter and to get it every month. And I believe I also provided on the handout to you a link to the most recent newsletter for this month, August 2022. Now, the Envoy on Youth Office has not yet set up a page where they have archived the newsletters. They told me that they are working on it. So that is why I have provided you with the link to the most recent newsletter, so you can go and take a look at the kind of information that they provide. But they give information about jobs, opportunities, events, tools, resources, campaigns. This will be a great way for you to keep track of how you can become more involved and participate in what is going on at the UN with regard to youth. As I mentioned to you, there you can also find snapshots of each UN country team. And this link that I have here allows you to keep track of all the UN country teams, including Brazil. And if you want to find out about the UN offices in Brazil, you can go to this link, which here, for instance, is how you get to the UN country team. I accidentally clicked on it. So if you click here, you go in, this is the snapshot, and then you will be able to find out what is going on in Brazil. I need to go back and reshare my PowerPoint. Give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. And then you can also look at the UN country team in Brazil. It'll tell you all of the different people. One of the most important people you should know about is what's called the resident coordinator. We refer to that person as the RC. They're located in Brasilia, but you have a way of keeping in contact with the UN country team in Brazil. So you should know about that as well. Now, when it comes to participation and taking action, one of the things you should absolutely know about is the Climate Action website, which I have given you the link to in the handout. And there you will find information about the science on climate change, the solutions, but most importantly, there's a whole section dealing with how you can take action. One of the things that the UN has created is an app that you can now download onto your mobile phone to help you keep track of your participation and what you are doing to help reduce your carbon footprint. So I highly urge you to go to this website and explore it. There is a great deal of information there, but most particularly if you want to find out how can you become more involved in this, there's a whole section on how you can take action on climate change. Then every year in April, there is the ECOSOC Youth Forum. Now, this past year, the ECOSOC Youth Forum was held virtually. Next year, they are planning to do a combination of an in-person forum and a hybrid to allow people to still participate in it without having to travel to New York. But this is also a great way for you to participate. And you can participate in the ECOSOC Youth Forum and watch the proceedings. It's more difficult to get an opportunity to actually make a speech. The number of speeches is limited. And as you can imagine, there are thousands of young people around the world that do participate, but only a small number of them actually get the opportunity to make a speech. Then you should know about an NGO which is very active with the UN called the Global Coalition on Youth, Peace, and Security. This is the leading platform for young people to shape global policy and practice on youth, peace, and security. And they facilitate collaboration between more than 70 organizations from civil society, the UN, academia, and intergovernmental bodies. So if this is an area which you would like to become more involved in, this is the organization you need to know more about and become involved in it. Now, from Wafuna's end, we also have a number of opportunities. We have the Wafuna Youth Network, which you can go to our website, find more about. Every year we have we have a Wafuna Youth Leader of the Year. And we've also put together a handbook for establishing a national youth delegate program. It's only supposed to be youth once in there. Now, the youth delegate program is something which is developed by delegations, by member states. Unfortunately, my last count, I believe there were only about 30 out of 193 countries that have a youth delegate as a part of their delegation. And these delegates participate in UN meetings, particularly in the third committee, which focuses on youth issues. So the youth delegates that do come from, that are a part of these delegations, they do get an opportunity to participate in real UN meetings as a part of their country's delegation and to make speeches as a part of their delegation. Now, I looked and I didn't see Brazil as one of the countries that is sponsoring a youth delegate, but we have put together a handbook to encourage young people who want to establish a national youth delegate program in their country. You can look at our handbook and see how you might go about doing that. So that's something that I would recommend if you are interested in having a program like that within your country. This is another way for young people to become more active in the proceedings of the United Nations. Now let's talk a little bit about Model UN and what does Model UN have to do with any of this? Well, we know that Model UN helps to articulate the global issues we should be concerned about. In every Model UN, you're assigned a particular agenda item that you focus on and a simulation that you participate in, but as a part of the preparation for that, you have to learn about that global issue in order to participate. And as a part of learning about that, you learn about what actions have been taken and what still needs to be done. So what solutions have been sought in the past, what have worked, what have not, and where are there gaps that still need to be filled to address that issue. So Model UN plays a very important role in raising awareness and understanding about the issue, in raising awareness about what actions have already been taken, and in raising awareness about what work we still need to do. Now, Model UN, throughout its history, has not had much of an opportunity to go beyond just simulations, but that has changed. Model UN can now be a stepping stone to taking action on global issues. We do know anecdotally that many Model UN students go on to either work at the United Nations or to work in their own government or to work in an NGO that works with the UN on a particular issue of importance. But more than that, there are now opportunities for Model UN delegates to apply what they've learned to develop community projects that aim to achieve one or more of the Sustainable Development Goals. At Wafuna, for instance, we offer those students that participate in any of our conferences an opportunity to receive professional training on how to design, implement, monitor, and evaluate a project in their own communities that focuses on one or more of the Sustainable Development Goals. So that is something that if you participate in one of our upcoming conferences, you would be eligible to participate and receive this professional training. And there will soon be opportunities for delegates to present their recommendations to member states. We will, within the next coming days, we will be making a very important announcement about a partnership which I have negotiated with the World Health Organization. Starting next year and every year after that, we will be organizing a conference for the World Health Organization that focuses on simulating the World Health Assembly. It will be called the Global Model WHO. The first one next year in February will be virtual, but every year after that, hopefully it will take place at the WH headquarters in Geneva. Now, what will be different about this conference is that we want to make sure that youth have a voice in the decision-making process. And so what we have worked out is that following the global model WHO, we will find a way for the student delegates to share their recommendations with member states at the WHO. And this is the first time that something like this will have happened within the UN system. So we're very proud that we've been able to do this. As I said, we will be making an announcement shortly within this month about this upcoming opportunity. Now, within Wafuna, for instance, we will be announcing an exciting youth project related to implementing the SDGs. So that is something, again, which if you will be announcing that on our website. The Wafuna Youth Council will be holding elections early next year, and UNAs will be nominating candidates for the Wafuna Leader of the Year for work they have done related to the UN or SDGs. The deadline will be the end of this year, and selection will be made in January of 2023. Now, for all of the Wafuna activities, you must go through the UN association of the country in which you live. So in other words, to be a part of the Wafuna Youth Council, you have to go through your national UNA in Brazil. And in order to nominate candidates for the Wafuna Youth Leader of the Year, you also have to go through the UN association in order to do that. And finally, the Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, as I'd mentioned before, will be making concrete recommendations on how to reform the GA, ECOSOC, and the Security Council so youth can become more meaningfully involved in these UN organs. So you should subscribe to their Pulse newsletter, because that would probably be a place where they will understand how you can become involved in having your voice heard in what these recommendations will be. So these are all upcoming opportunities of how you can become more involved. It is really, as I said, an exciting time at the United Nations for youth participation in the decision-making process. We hope that your discussions will be fruitful during your conference, that they will spark an interest to help others, and that during this process, we hope that you will also have fun and make new friends. Obrigado e adios. Thank you very much for listening to my remarks.
Thank you so much, Bill, for your presentation. It was incredible how many opportunities we have for youth right now. It's a very exciting moment, as you said. And we hope that Brazilian students and FAMUN students can take all these opportunities you've presented, so we can have more Brazilian youth being represented at the United Nations. So to continue our presentation now, I would like to give the floor once again to the FAMUN Secretariat. They have prepared some questions for Bill. So we'll do 2 rounds of questions, and I give the floor to our Secretary General so she can organize our Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bill, for this incredible presentation. Our first round of questions will be started by me. And my question is, the youth of today will be the leaders of the future. However, our efforts and our voice remain invisible sometimes. So how do you believe we can change this reality based on your presentation? Thank you so much. Now I will pass for Fernando for the next question.
Thank you, Bill. It's always great to hear from you. So my question is, how close do you think we are from including an actual youth council to the United Nations? Is the possibility of institutionalizing the role of youth on the United Nations arriving, or are we still far from this goal? Thank you. Now I'll give to Giovanni.
Thank you, Bill, for your amazing presentation. My question is, as an organizer of the Wafuna United Nations and developer of the FAMUN approach, how important do you think the MUNs are for the empowerment and engagement of youth? Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that last question?
Yes. As an organizer of Wafuna United Nations and developer of the FAMUN approach, how important do you think the MUNs are for the empowerment and engagement of youth?
Thank you for your presentation, Bill. My question is, what can we, civil society, do to pressure the UN system in order to actually create the Youth Council, considering its importance? Thank you, Bill. It was the last question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Those are really great questions. Some of them are quite complex. I'll try my best. Let me start with the Youth Council. So the origin of the idea of the Youth Council came from some think tanks outside of the UN system who are interested in reforming the United Nations. And so this was a part of a number of different recommendations that they had made, one of which involved the creation of the Youth Council. And their idea was to make the Youth Council a part of the General Assembly. Some proposed, as you know, the General Assembly has 6 committees. Some proposed making it a 7th committee. Other proposals are to make it a subsidiary organ to the General Assembly, much like the Human Rights Council is a subsidiary organ. Now, from my standpoint here, I don't see any movement towards the creation of a youth council at this moment. But what I do see, which I have mentioned before, is this initiative coming from the Secretary General and then through the Envoy on Youth to reform, how to reform the General Assembly, the main organs of the UN, the General Assembly, the Economic and Social Council, Security Council. How can the voice of youth be more integrated into these organs? How can youth have a greater voice in these organs? I think that effort in itself is a starting point. And I think that whatever recommendations come out, and as I mentioned before, this is something that you can participate in once the Envoy on Youth has announced how that. I met with them recently, and this is something that they will be working on. I don't have a particular date when it will start, but this is something that they will be working on. So you will be able to participate in that process if you want to. I think this is the starting point. I think that if real reform comes about in existing organs, then I think the next step after that is perhaps to advocate for the creation of a youth council. So my recommendation and what I see the process being is first concentrating on how we can reform the GA, ECOSOC, and the Security Council by giving youth a more meaningful, diverse, and effective voice in these institutions. Now, we have seen some progress in that. So, for instance, the Security Council Resolution 2250, if you go back and look at that, that was a very significant milestone in terms of the voice of youth. And they were involved, the Envoy on Youth was very involved in increasing the voice of youth in that particular resolution. So that would be that's how I see things unfolding as far as that goes. I think that takes care of 3 of the questions. The Hmong engagement of youth, how important is it? I think it's very important. I think that, first of all, I don't think that the UN has adequately recognized how important the voice of youth, not the voice of youth, how important Model UN has been. If you look at all these different milestones that I mentioned before about focusing on youth and youth issues, none of them mention Model UN. Now, there have been a number of resolutions, I believe 11 of them in the early history of the UN that went through the late 1960s that focused on and called on the importance of teaching in schools about the structure and principles and activities of the United Nations. And for some reason, we do not know why from the 1970s on, these resolutions stopped. But Model UN has really delivered on what was put forward in these resolutions. It provides and informs students about the structure of the UN, about the principles of the UN and the activities of the UN in a way that no other educational activity does. And the UN has never adequately recognized that. I'm currently working on trying to change that. And hopefully next year we will be celebrating the 80th anniversary of Model UN. The very first one that I found occurred in 1943. And I'm working to try to establish a new international day that would recognize Model UN. It would be something like a World Model UN Day. I don't know if I'll be successful, but I am working with some member states to try to accomplish that, because I think that it's long overdue and that Model UN needs to be formally recognized by the UN in terms of the contributions it has made. The last survey that I did recently during the pandemic, I found that Model UN is in about 142 countries around the world. I found another 22 countries where students who, even though they do not have a Model UN in their country, they have traveled to another country that does have a Model UN. So that brings the total up to roughly 163 countries where students are involved in Model UN. Nobody knows the actual number, but my best estimate is that 300,000 plus students every year participate in Model UN. It's a huge number. So I think that Model UN, in answer to your question, is there is no educational activity that compares to Model UN as a way of engaging youth in the work of the UN. My simple answer. The first question on the voice of youth, I think that my comments addressed how we can increase the voice of youth. I think the UN recognizes the importance of it. I think the UN is listening to young people. Young people themselves have told the UN that their voice needs to be heard more in the United Nations. They recognize that young people feel that their voice is not being heard enough, as you had mentioned. And I think that they're really sincerely doing things about it. I think that we can point to very concrete things, particularly through the activities of the Envoy on Youth's office. So I encourage you to subscribe to the Pulse newsletter and to keep track of what is going on and to get involved, to get more involved. Yes, I feel that not enough, that voice isn't being heard enough, but I would not agree that it's not being heard at all. I think that it is. And I think that the UN is taking it very seriously. I think that more needs to be done. But I think the fact that there is now these progress reports every year, that's a way of putting pressure, because without those progress reports, there was no way of holding UN country teams accountable for whether or not they're working to achieve these goals. You can now go and look and see what the UN country team in Brazil is doing. And if you feel they're not doing enough, you can go and have your voice heard. So I hope that answers the questions that you put to me.
Yes, thank you so much, Bill. Your explanation was very clarifying. Now we start the second round of questions, and they will be started by Thalisson Gomes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill. My question is, what is the importance of youth dialogue with the older generations, especially the older people who are currently in leadership positions for the construction of our future? Thank
you. Thank you, Bill, for your presentation. I want to ask you, in your perspective, the UN and the member states are welcoming signs of the protest coming from the youth? Are they truly listening and taken into consideration in discussions?
Thank you. I'm gonna make another question. I would like to know how you think the youth of the South Global can be more participative or can be more included in this action, because we have seen lots of solutions for the youth, but most of them don't apply to the South Global. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Bill, for your speech. In your experience, how can youth-led initiatives can break barriers and stereotypes to working with the states or the United Nations? This was the last question of the round of questions of the open ceremony, Bill. Thank you again.
Again, thank you for those great questions. The first question I think is really quite intriguing. I'm not personally aware of any initiatives to increase dialogue between youth and older generations. I think to a certain extent, just, if the voice of youth is integrated more into the United Nations itself, that you will be engaging in dialogue with older generations just by that mere fact that, many of the ambassadors and other UN diplomats are representatives of older generations. But I do think, there are NGOs. Interestingly enough, just as there is, and you don't hear about it as much, but just as there are a real push at the UN to increase opportunities for youth to have their voice heard in a meaningful, diverse, and effective way, there are NGOs that focus on how can we get the voice of older generations heard more at the UN? How can the issues, because they have issues as well that are important to their generation that sometimes don't get as much attention. So their voice is not as loud at the UN as perhaps we are seeing the voices of youth. But it would be interesting for youth to reach out to perhaps some of these NGOs and get a dialogue going. I think that would be a very interesting thing to see. What I do see that's quite fascinating is if when you read, and I do urge you to read our common agenda, the report, a recent report from the Secretary General, the Secretary General is making a point that we need to focus on a dialogue with future generations. So think about this. It's not just with older generations, but it's also dialogue with future generations, because we do not think enough about how our actions, particularly with climate change, we're talking about the whole idea of sustainable development is how can we increase the standard of living for everyone on this planet while making sure that the Earth's resources are available for future generations. So we need to have a mindset that is not only focused on now, but it's focused on now in a way that we need to focus on now, but in a way that doesn't hurt and damage the lives of people in future generations. So it's a very interesting concept to think that the dialogue, we need to think of a dialogue with future generations, not just in terms of the people that are here and now. So that's also something for you to think about. Is the UN truly listening? I think they are. I think they are. I see real movement with regard to how to increase the voice of youth at the UN. It's not going to happen overnight. As I mentioned, some of the earliest initiatives go back to 1965, when I was a part of the UN and I was the focal point on youth. And when I look at what was going on then, which was quite a bit, and what is going on now, there's been a huge increase, particularly because of the appointment of the envoy on youth. Things have really moved and changed at the UN. The youth were very involved in the negotiations on the Sustainable Development Goals. Did they get everything they wanted? No, but we can absolutely see how the voice of youth was integrated into what the final version of the Sustainable Development Goals. So the answer to your question is, I think they truly are listening. As I mentioned before, can more be done? Yes, but I think they are moving towards that. I think I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of recommendations they come up with of how to reform the main organs of the UN so that the voice of youth are integrated more into those organs. But I do think that they are truly listening, and that you have more opportunities. Your generation has more opportunities than previous generations. How can youth of the South participate more? One of the things, the language that's used in talking about how to improve the voice, increase the voice of youth at the UN, three key words. How can we make it more meaningful? How can we make sure that it is diverse? And what was the third one? Meaningful, and effective. How can we make sure that the voice of youth is effective? And these three things address some of the questions you're asking. Are they really listening? That addresses the issue, is the voice really being effective? How can the voice of youth in the South be heard more? This is the issue of how can we make sure that the voices of youth is diverse? This really depends upon how aware you are of the UN system and how it works, and what entry points you have to make sure that your voice is heard. As I said, you have a UN country team in Brazil. Use them. Contact them. If you think the voice of youth in the South is not being heard, let them know that. Look at the organizations that are involved. I gave you an example of some organizations. The coalition. Contact those organizations, become involved. I do believe that we do have, from my observations at the UN, I do believe we are hearing from youth in the South. It may not be apparent to you because you're not really involved in the institutions or organizations that are actively involved in the UN, but their voices are being heard, and you can be a part of those voices. How can youth-led initiatives break barriers? I think those barriers are being broken, but you need to be more aware of what youth-led organizations are actively involved in breaking those barriers. The global coalition that I told you about is one of the best organizations where the voice of youth is breaking those barriers. So you need to be more aware of what organizations are making progress and how you can become involved in them. So the short answer to the question is, I think those barriers are being broken. You need to become more aware of what organizations are breaking those barriers and how you can become a part of what they are doing.
Thank you, Bill. This debate was incredible. Your answers really inspired our students to take action, to really be part of the United Nations, to take part of this space that does not belong only to member states, but to all the people. And I hope our students take these opportunities and take action as you recommended. And also, Bill, we're approaching the end of our opening ceremony. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you once again, to thank all your support. FAMUN is much better with the YMON approach. Our students are greater students due to the YMON approach, and that's only because you have supported us through this journey. Also extend our thank you to all Wafuna team for our collaboration. So I would like to thank once again you, Bill. I would like to thank the FAMUN Senior Secretariat for their work. They still have 4 days of conference, and they're very excited about it to see everything in action. And also I'd like to thank all the participants that are live at FACAMP YouTube channel watching us. Now we will transition to the next part of this open ceremony, which is the General Assembly opening plenary. So I ask all participants to wait a few minutes while we transition to the open ceremony. And thank you all, and thank you, Bill, once again for joining us today.
Thank you and good luck to everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So participants, wait just a few minutes while we transition to the General Assembly opening plenary, when we will hear the statements of FAMUN delegates.
Começou? The first meeting of the 9th session of the FACAMP Model United Nations General Assembly is now called to order. I now invite representatives to observe 1 minute of silence, prayer, or meditation. Thank you. Ms. Larissa Liria, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, head of states, government, and delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to address you at the opening of the 9th session of FACAMP Model United Nations General Assembly. I would like to thank the Assembly for having entrusted me with presiding this session. I'm truly honored. Every year, we face problems and challenges that need to be solved through cooperation and dialogue. Some of these problems are new, as was the case with the COVID-19 pandemic, which requires the mobilization of all states so damage to human life could be mitigated in a joint action. I say mitigated because even though many people consider that the pandemic is already over, the COVID-19 pandemic is still a public health problem that deserves attention, not only from national leaders, but also from the entire international community. I urge all UN member states to cooperate so that COVID-19 vaccines reach the place that they have not yet reached, so that people are protected against the virus. Only then can the pandemic end. Madam Secretary General, older challenges and problems are old and known by almost everyone. Climate change is one of the present challenges whose effects need to be addressed and mitigated by joint efforts. Poverty, hunger, and war are the older problems that deserve attention because without solving them, our life is threatened, as well as our future. In addition to these problems, there are also flaws that are hardly known and reported, such as the lack of guaranteed human rights for thousands of stateless children. It is our duty to solve these challenges and problems so that you can live in a better world, ensuring our survival and that of future generations. This can only be done through cooperation, multilateralism, and the fulfillment of our goals already established in the 2030 Agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, delegates, I would also like to invite you to reflect on our future. As well as know, this problem affects our lives and can affect our children and grandchildren ever more violently. It is worth remembering that others have already passed by and also try to solve these problems. But you need to ask ourselves, what is enough? Were the goals set and the agreements made so far enough for us to solve hunger, war, poverty, the violence of human rights and health crisis? Are we not a future generation that is already being harmed? Here, I would like to draw attention to the essential role of youth as agents of change. The participation of young people in the solution to global problems is essential. You need to listen to them and to understand the future we are building. Furthermore, I call upon all member states present to discuss our future today. Our future is what we accomplish now, and we will certainly be charged with each. Therefore, I call all states in the space of harmony among nations to cooperate and engage in solving these problems. Thank you so much. I now give the floor to the Secretary General, Her Excellency Larissa Liria.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Thaleson Gomes, President of the General Assembly of FAMUN 2022, distinguished head of state and government, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The pandemic only highlighted the problems of societies, putting evidence the weakness and the vulnerabilities of states. COVID-19 is just one of our concerns today, as we are experiencing a sharp increase in natural disasters and climate changes, while inequalities and poverty continue to grow. The global economy is in crisis, and social setbacks are rising. As a result, global social indicators are decreasing. These problems require a global solutions based on multilateralism. Due to that, collective problems, such as climate changes, can only be solved with collective actions. Therefore, the integration of multi-stakeholders around this common goal is extremely important, and youth being one of the most essential actors in this process. The policy paper, We Are Here, an integrated approach to youth inclusive peace progress, organized by UN Office on Youth in 2019, was essential to highlight the role of youth people as key actor in promoting international peace and security. Young people are the ones who suffer the most from the effects of international crisis, and those who work most actively to resolve them. Around the world, youth have been actively working to find solutions to problems such as climate change, economic and social inequalities, and human rights violations. However, their efforts are often invisible to the international community. Therefore, Mr. President and head of states and government, I urge you to consider the essential role of youth during your resolutions and negotiations. The environment agenda has been in international discussions for 50 years, but its progress has been very slow. There is no more time to waste. The climate crisis is already here. The future we want must be built right now. We are running out of time to deal with the climate crisis, and all countries and all people have a responsibility to act now to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and change your partners of change your consumption of partners and production and raise awareness. For this, the Act Now campaign created by the United Nations draws attention of decision makers and civil society. Therefore, I urge nations and other stakeholders to unite around the common goal to act now against climate changes. We can defeat this crisis. We can build a better world and a better future. We have a responsibility to our planet Earth and the people who live on it. I am convinced that it is possible. Let's make it happen together. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the Secretary General for her statement. May I invite the General Assembly to direct its attention to the Section E of the first report of the General Committee entitled General Debate, which contains a number of recommendations concerning the conduct of the meetings and other items of importance. In paragraph 12, the General Committee recommends that the length for statement by individual delegations should be 2 minutes. May I take it that the assemblies take note of information contained in paragraph 12 and approve the recommendation the statement should be no more than 2 minutes for individual delegations? It is so decided. May I further invite the General Assembly to direct its attention to the Section F of the report of the committee entitled Conduct of Meetings, Length of Statements, Explanation of Vote, Right of Reply, Points of Order, and Concluding Statements. In paragraph 14, the General Committee recommends that the length for explanation of vote or position should be limited to 1 minute. May I take it that the Assembly takes note of the information contained in paragraph 14 and approve the recommendation the explanation of vote or position should be no more than 1 minute? It is so decided. May I now invite members to turn their attention to the Section 3, dealing with the adoption of the agenda. The question of the allocation of items will be dealt with subsequently in the Section 4. In paragraph 21, in connection with the adoption of item 3 of the draft agenda, the General Committee recommends that item 5 be included in the agenda of the current session under 13, Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Children, Ending Statelessness. May I take it that Assembly approves this recommendation? It is so decided. The General Assembly was thus concluded its consideration of the first report of the General Committee. I wish to thank all the members of the Assembly for their cooperation. Distinguished delegates, I invited the General Assembly to begin its general debate. I wish to inform delegations that the list of speakers during the general debate is closed, and to remind delegates that are on the list of speakers that the length for statements by individual delegations shall be 2 minutes. I now give the floor to the first speaker on my list, the distinguished representative of Venezuela. Representative of Venezuela, you have the floor.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, head of state, government, and delegations. A simple definition of future by Merriam-Webster is a time regarded as still to come, but its perception is no simple matter. It sometimes comes too fast, sometimes too slowly, and for some people, it never comes. This is why the theme of our conference is about the future. War, climate crisis, and other worldly catastrophes have worrisome consequences for the future generations. The United Nations must act on behalf of our children and the children beyond. This is why we gather here and we make decisions. This is why, as an agency, we exist. The delegation of Venezuela likely partakes in this conference. Our nation hopes to find the light of a brighter, better, more hopeful future. We are the future, fellow delegates. We are the change. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Venezuela for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Peru.
Thank you.
Representative of Peru, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Larissa Lara, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, governments, and delegations. I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Telson Gomes, on your election as President of the General Assembly. Our word is a will, and this is a subject of utmost importance for all of us. As Socrates once brought us, if someone seeks help, we are supposed to ask whether they are willing to avoid the cause of leniency in the future. Otherwise, there is nothing to be done. Thus, are you willing to avoid the cause of our world's lenience? Are you willing to set aside our difference? Are you willing to collaborate to make our world a better place? Since we are here together, I believe this reunion is a symbol of such desire. Our world lenience are global warming, climate change, to the established, and so on. And yet, we are the health and we are the future. We, young people, are the agents who can and will change the future with our actions. Every breath we take, every step we take, every thought we have will affect humanity's future. The delegation of Peru believes that together we are stronger, and all the delegation of UN here today will enter into consensus and assure for all countries better conditions. But the delegation encourages all here present to now take the risk in order to unite and build a better future. We are the United Ambassadors, let's act like church, and together heal the lenience of the world. Thanks, Mr. President, for your time, and I end my speech.
I thank the representative of Peru for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Sweden. Representative of Sweden, you have the floor.
Mrs. Larissa Líria, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, government, and delegations, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Talison Gomes, on your election as President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, climate change has shown its worst face over the years. The consequence of negligence on the subject raises the question of whether we are really prepared to deal with the future. A future in which the next generations will be made up of adults who are currently young people dealing with the results of a global mismanagement in relation to the protection of the planet. The Kingdom of Sweden believes that change needs to be immediate and effective so that we can protect our young people from a close and imminent climate crisis without further solutions. We are here now, we must discuss, but mostly act, because the planet is ours, and from the collectivity of our individualities, it will be possible to bring a greater picture of how to solve global crises, to change and shape the future together. Sustaining social development and implementing sustainable development ideals are key to ensure that we will be here in the future, as are the young people who will inherit the current global scenario. Placing our interests side by side, we reinforce dialogue and conflict resolutions through understanding and respecting the sovereignty of all states present here. Sweden believes in the power of the General Assembly as an important model of relations between countries. This way, ensuring a livable present, fighting the effects of climate change in order to protect the planet, we hope that the objectivities of the Assembly will be achieved. Respecting human rights and the rights of the planet, we can be the change. We are capable to shape the future, guarantee that we can live together in peace, and implement as our philosophy that we are here and the future is now. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity.
I thank the representative of Sweden for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Bahamas. Representative of Bahamas, you have the floor.
Ms. Larissa Lira, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, government, and delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Teleson Gomes, on our election as President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, I'm grateful to be here representing my state. We are traveling down a perilous path toward the future. Our world has never been more compromised than is now. The COVID-19 pandemic has increased the rate of inequality that has prevailed in the world. The climate crisis threatens the environment in which we live and the beings with whom we share. We witness the rise of hunger and scarcity present on every continent, and the high and frequent forced displacement as a result of the incessant armed conflict that subjects the Earth's citizens to moments of suffering. Confucius, in one of his most famous phrases, "Study the past if you would define the future," summarizes what we have been doing and synthesizes in a way our duty. As diplomats, it's up to us to study, think, and elaborate ways in which we can raise our reality to a still utopian future, full of solidarity, peace, women's rights, justice, and dignity. To achieve this utopia is our commitment to promote projects that encourage young students to engage in solving the problems that make up our reality, debating and promoting means to eradicate them. They will be our future. For the future, I wish it to resemble the sea of the Bahamas, blue. The color blue represents security, trust, and above all, tranquility. The world needs us, and we need it. Today, we don't need more walls separating nations, but friendly hands willing to improve the reality in which we live. Because we are here, and the future is now. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Bahamas for his statement. I now give the floor to distinguished representative of Haiti. Representative of Haiti, you have the floor.
Mrs. Larissa Liria, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, government, and delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Teleson Gomes, on your election as President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, the Republic of Haiti is honored to have the opportunity to speak on topics of utmost importance to today's world. It's been 77 years since the UN started its work, and the institution still fights for a better world next to many people around the globe. With just under 10 years left, everyone here has a fundamental part in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. The nations here are responsible for the future generations and for the place that we are leaving for them to live. Haiti is proud to say that we achieved 2 out of the 17 goals stipulated by the UN, but that's not enough. It is known how hard it can be, but if people all over the world mobilize, progress would be faster. The world needs to work on the climate change before it's too late. Needs to work on peace, gender equality, education, poverty and hunger, sanitation, clean energy, decent work, sustainable communities, responsible consumption, and life, on land or below the water. People suffer and starve every day. Animals and plants are going extinct all of the time. The whole planet is changing day by day, and its future is in your hands. It is necessary to work together for all the children and families that live here, for the flora and fauna, for the planet. Most importantly, it is necessary to not give up our future. The motto of Haiti is unity is strength. And with that in your minds, remember, the future is right now. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Haiti for her statement. I now give the floor to distinguished representative of Cuba. Representative of Cuba, you have the floor.
Thank you. Ms. Larissa Lira, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of states, government, and delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Thaleson Miguel, on your election as President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, since the first centuries, people have known that when it comes to looking to the future, the past and the present are not excluded. Everything we are was formed by who we used to be. Today, sitting here, our country is with decades of history, with struggles for human rights and revolutions. Nations with heroes of their own histories, individuals who face prejudice and discrimination. What do we do for the persons who die fighting for the rights that people are enjoying now? What should we do with the memories of our history? We must create a better future and keep our world great for future generations. Nations join hands in favor of peaceful coexistence, discussing and creating resolutions for the best of all. That's why so many people are gathered today. Born from records of a devastated war, the UNA brought the empathy and a functional diplomacy. Since its foundation, the UNA has continued to help build a better world. Now, the UNA remembers the past, keeps the present alive, and writes a future in the resolutions that will be made this week. Every conversation and action we take here is helping to honor the past, the now, and the future, because we are here and the future is in our hands. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Cuba for her statement. I now give the floor to distinguished representative of United Kingdom. Representative of United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Ms. Larissa Liria, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, government, and delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Thaleson Miguel, on your election as President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, it is an honor to be here representing such an amazing country in this important entity. Nowadays, the time has become one of the most valuable aspects of our life. So, living the present is a gift. Having said that, acting with the intent of preparing a better future for the future generations are just more and more. Hence, balance is the key for a better future. Mixing progress with sustainability is the success path. Therefore, debating our actions together and mixing our mindset is essential. However, it is crucial to turn our speeches into actions, since meaningless words have no space in the future we want to build. Now, this is the reason that we gather here. Along that, united will come to the pathways which our nations are meant to cross, to put up with intelligent and technological solutions for transforming our today and tomorrow. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for his statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Romania. Representative of Romania, you have the floor.
Ms. Larissa Lira, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of states, government, and delegation. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Thaleson Gomes, on your election as President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, in your we grow up early that children are the future of the world, but how can we push them like this when more than 50% of the... Mas, gente, desculpa, não vai dar.
I thank the representative of Romania for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Myanmar. Representative of Myanmar, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Larissa Lira, General Secretary of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, government, and delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Thaleson Gomes, for his election as the President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, our society has been highly damaged. Problems such as social inequality, violation of human rights, and climate crisis have become much more extensive and dangerous. This pandemic brought a breakthrough. The world is in chaos. Countless difficulties from different countries were exposed, in which many people were not aware. This only showed that doing things like the old days will not work. We have to think about how we can grow and deal with different knowledge. Above all, make the population aware of the importance of the future. Therefore, Myanmar believes that there is no more time to waste. We have to fight now to ensure the future. It is important to think about relevant discussions that will have a big impact on current and future generations, mainly to deal with climate crisis, something that is progressing rapidly, becoming extremely harmful to human life, and may even lead to its extinction. In this way, the contribution of research, observations, and experience around the world is remarkable. The time has come to share solutions and answers, unify our efforts, and committing ourselves to helping society now and in the future. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Myanmar for her statement. I now give you the floor to distinguished representative of São Tomé and Príncipe. Representative of São Tomé and Príncipe, you have the floor.
Delegate, please, can you unmute your microphone so we can hear you?
Sorry.
Thank
Mr. President, thank you for the honor. Good morning, delegates, press, and public. I'm here as the representative of São Tomé and Príncipe to remember all of you that from now on, we're going to decide the clauses which will guide the nations through the drastic challenges humankind is facing. It's not new that condition of our planet is getting worse every day. We are in front of an irreversible climate and ambiental crisis. Without talking about the thousands of children in statelessness due to conflicts that also prevent vaccination against the COVID-19 virus to people in fragile and exposed realities. Yet, this is the end. Now it's our turn to take the role and do something about it. The adults won't be here to reap the consequences, but we will. Our children will. So, delegates, be engaged and open to decisions we are going to make here. Today, begin a new journey that will change the destiny of our planet for good. I know I'm talking on behalf of small alliance and in development countries when I say we're truly interested in these meetings, even that we're the most exposed to this ambiental crisis. So, don't be afraid to defend your people. Everyone deserves the rights affirmed by Agenda 2030. Moreover, my country is really fragile to minimal climate changes, which seriously affect our economy. Furthermore, global warming is a real threat to islands due to increasing sea level. Pay attention, delegates. We're not talking about economy. We're talking about entire nations underwater due to this heating. That's why I encourage a posture of collaboration, empathy, and union between every delegation and NGOs here represented. Before our nationality, we're all members of Earth. Changes organs of one will affect all. Thus, be sure we don't repeat the same mistakes our predecessors made. We can and we will save our home and make it more equal and safe, being allied to the spirit of consensus and collaboration during the assembly. The future isn't tomorrow, it's now. So let's make it bright. Thank you.
I thank the representative of São Tomé and Príncipe for her statement. I now give you the floor to the distinguished representative of South Africa. Representative of South Africa, you have the floor.
Ms. Larissa Liria, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, government, and delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Telson Gomez, on your election as President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, in recent years, our humanity was concerned and discussed about future problems, global warming, inclusion of minorities, poverty, hunger, and controversial issues. It's no longer discussions and suppositions. It's now reality. In the year 2020, there was an increase of 34 degrees Fahrenheit or 1.2 degrees Celsius above the temperatures of the pre-industrial era. 820 million people affected by hunger. 80 million people refused due to human rights violations. 100 million in situation of vulnerability. All this is happening now. It cannot be put up. These people won't have us. The Republic of South Africa is very concerned about the increase in people with restricted access to healthy food. So we ask for attention to this problem. There is no more time for discussions. We need to act. We have the power and the duty to change. With our words and actions, we influence thousands of young people who will be taking our places in the future, and we'll be able to contribute and through the debate, find a consensus for a better world. We must use our debating skills and our representation to save the world that is burning in flames and is screaming for help. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of South Africa for his statement. I now give the floor to distinguished representative of Suriname. Representative of Suriname, you have the floor.
Ms. Larissa Liria, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, government, and delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Talison Miguel, on your election as President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, future. What do you think when the idea of the future comes to mind? A time where we will never achieve? A world with incredible advances in technologies? Does it relate to death or even life? Well, for Suriname, it always was related to mystery. The thoughts of what could happen with our country, even with many great ideas that were inside of many citizens, were still only thoughts, remaining our future a mystery. But this idea will not remain for long. In 1975, Suriname became independent. It was the first time that citizens could finally say, I am Surinamese. And this didn't happen with a snap of fingers. This happened because someone lifted their hands and said, I am here for my country. And with that simple action, many lifted their hands and said, we are here. And with this, Guyana became Suriname. This was our new future. But then it happened, dictatorship. A dark age not only for us, but many countries around the world. But again, with the hope of many who lifted their hands and fought for a better future saying, we are here, Suriname can happily say that in 1991, dictatorship was finally over. And this was our new future. So what is the future after all? Future is hope. The hope of many who fought for a better country. The hope of many who desired a better life. The hope of many who desired a better future. And today we mark another future, not only for Suriname, but for all countries. There are people all around the world who will lift their hands with their hearts full of hope and say, we are here for peace, equality, stability, sustainability. So the last thing Suriname has to say is, don't lose hope, because the future is now, and we are here. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Suriname for his statement. I now give the floor to distinguished representative of El Salvador. Representative of El Salvador, you have the floor.
Ms. Larissa Lira, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, I read you of state, government, and delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Talison Gomes, on your election as President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, the future is now, right at this moment. Today, we live to tomorrow, it is the consequence of yesterday. You Salvadorans know that the future is to accept their news, it open eyes and in a friendly way. Not only do you know who you showed you come with, but you also know that the future is the one to look to the past and to change the present. It also know to use that for a prosperous future, you needed to look to the past realistically, not every single detail, as painful as it is, and you learn from it, not forget to the past, but you learn it. The future of now is to accept the mistakes of what yesterday was. The Salvadorans believe that you can learn from those who have long been forgotten. Wilbur Irma Sacred and Jacélio Ronyos. Not only do we believe in learning from yesterday, but we believe that you recommend what today is. Offers the essential for building a stable future, transforming the humanity youth use. Is on to us to grasp to tomorrow. We believe that with empathy, leadership, friendship, and honor, you can fix what you have destroyed. The Salvadorans believe that by respecting the natural, the world, the ordinary people, and yourselves, you can build together a rich future. Los salvadoreños estão sumamente agradecidos por la oportunidade de hablar ahora. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of El Salvador for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Iran. Representative of Iran, you have the floor.
Ms. Larissa Lidia, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, government, and delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Carlos Gomes, on your election as President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, we are facing a chaotic global scenario. Climate change and global warming, the refugee crisis, and the violation of youth's basic right of study are some of the biggest problems of the contemporary world. While sometimes we try to show how wrong our opinions are,
Delegado, desculpa, você pode tentar colocar sua câmera um pouco mais para trás para que a gente possa ver o seu rosto?
Sorry.
Nós iremos aguardar só um segundo enquanto o delegado arruma a câmera dele e já nós voltamos para o discurso dele. Agora você pode... Isso, e pode começar de novo, por favor.
Okay, sorry. So, Ms. Larissa Lidia, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, government, and delegations. I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Carlos Gomes, on your election as President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, we are facing a chaotic global scenario. Climate change and global warming, the refugee crisis, and the violation of youth's basic right of study are some of the biggest problems of the contemporary world. While sometimes we try to show how wrong our opinions are, people are dying when they try crossing borders. Animals are losing their habitats due to the melting of polar ice and even deforestation. And youth people are working when they should be studying. Delegates, today, what I promise you, we can show people around the world they chose the correct ones to be here. We are representing them, our countries, and together, the whole world. Let's dialogue with each other and find strong and long-term solutions for problems we are here to talk about. We can do it better. We must do it. Furthermore, we are here and the future is now. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Iran for his statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Mexico. Representative of Mexico, you have the floor.
Ms. Larissa Lidia, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, government, and delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Carlos Gomes, on your election as President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, Over the past century, nations have come together to make the world safe and sustainable. To this end, we have produced the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the World Food Programme, the Kyoto Protocol, and more recently, the 2030 Agenda. By establishing rights and protecting the environment, we have grown together. However, the world has not, in fact, transformed. Planet's temperature grows at unprecedented rates. Underdeveloped countries have only 20% vaccinated against COVID-19. In 2022, over 200 million children are at risk of becoming stateless. Sadly, the advance has not come for all. Yet, we have right now a key to propel change towards worldwide paradigms. And this key is our youth. As stated by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, quote, "The world needs young people to speak out, think big, and push boundaries." For that, I claim the member states here present. Only through empowering our youth, we will build a vigorous forefront to fight statelessness, climate change, and health crisis. With that in mind, we must, just for once, open our hearts to the cry of the unheard and embrace the vivid youth activism. Ultimately, we shall achieve real change in our work through debate and consensus. Mexico is here. We are here. And together, we must act right now. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Mexico for his statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Iraq.
Ms. Larissa Liria, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, government, and delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Talisson Gomes, on your election as President of the General Assembly. Mr. President, a hero is someone who lives up to everyone's expectations. In adventure stories, it's the person that, with superpowers, has the capacity to save the planet and change a lot of lives. But above all things, they value humanity, protect people that can do it themselves, and appreciate the world that surrounds them. In real life, they're also heroes. Differently from fiction, they aren't necessarily strong, nor have done something grandiose during their lives. They are normal people who give us hope and help us cultivate fortitude in challenging situations. They are empathetic, believe in humankind, and fight for justice and their values.
Delegates, I'm sorry, we have a problem with our connection. We can start again.
Yes, sorry.
Our president will give the floor.
Okay.
Distinguished representative of Iraq, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Larissa Liria, Secretary General of FAMUN 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, heads of state, government, and delegations. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. Talisson Gomes, on your election as President of General Assembly. Mr. President, a hero is someone who lives up to everyone's expectations. In adventure stories, it's the person that with superpowers has the capacity to save the planet and change a lot of lives. But above all things, they value humanity, protect people that can do it themselves, and appreciate the world that surrounds them. In real life, they're also heroes. Differently from fiction, they aren't necessarily strong nor have done something grandiose during their lives. They are normal people who give us hope and help us cultivate fortitude in challenging situations. They are empathetic, believe in humankind, and fight for justice and their values. Most of them are silent, but without a doubt, powerful. These are our everyday heroes, people that through their actions can make a difference. Facing discrimination, poverty, gender inequality, hunger, and unequal access to education, health, decent work, and housing, they contribute in their own way to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Everyone can be one. We need to be the change we want to see in the world. Heroes from stories don't exist, so we can't wait forever for a tale to become reality. We are our everyday heroes. We have the power to change the world now. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Iraq for her statement. We have heard the last speaker on my list for the open plenary. The first meeting of the 9th session of FAMUN is now adjourned.
Muito obrigada, presidente da Assembleia Geral, Thalisson Gomes, secretária-geral do FAMUN 2022, Larissa Líria e Fernando Cavalari, o nosso subsecretário-geral para assuntos de conferência. Agora nós estamos nos aproximando do final da nossa cerimônia de abertura. Gostaria de agradecer a todos os delegados que fizeram discursos incríveis na nossa plenária. Acompanhem ao vivo no Twitter a cobertura dos discursos com os principais destaques. E agora, antes de encerrar a nossa cerimônia, eu gostaria de dar alguns recados, alguns avisos para os nossos participantes. Estamos aguardando todos vocês ansiosamente aqui no campus da FACAMP. Nossos portões se abrirão meio-dia para receber os delegados e o credenciamento começa às 13h. Não se atrasem para o credenciamento. No credenciamento, não esqueçam de trazer 3 documentos principais: o seu RG, o seu Liability Waiver, que é o termo de responsabilidade assinado, e o seu comprovante de vacinação. Além disso, não esqueçam também de trazerem todos os materiais para a conferência. Se você tiver um notebook, um laptop, papel, caneta, tragam todos esses equipamentos necessários para o início das atividades da simulação. Então, aguardamos todos vocês às 13h para o credenciamento aqui na FACAMP. E agora, antes de encerrar, eu gostaria de passar novamente a palavra para o Secretariado Sênior do FAMUN 2022. E para isso eu gostaria de chamar novamente ao palco a nossa Undersecretary General for Management, Bruna. O nosso Assistant Secretary General for Management, Giovanni. A nossa Undersecretary General for Global Communications, Bianca. E o nosso Assistant Secretary General for Global Communications, Gabriel. Passo então a palavra para o Secretariado Sênior para que eles possam fazer as honras e abrir oficialmente os trabalhos do FAMUN 2022.
Distintos delegados e distintas delegadas, em nome do Secretariado Sênior do FAMUN 2022, eu declaro aberto os nossos trabalhos. Muito obrigada. Muito obrigada. Nós nos vemos em alguns instantes, agora à tarde. Tchau, tchau.